Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 141 of the Layover Live, where we normally bring you the top article from the Layover each week and have a guest or two on to discuss. But this week, we're going to try something a little bit different. Now, we wanted to go back to the vault and bring you some of the best pieces of advice from your fellow marketers over the last several months of the pandemic. Now, the coronavirus outbreak may be the worst crisis in living memory for many of us, and you'd be hard-pressed to find an industry as hard hit as travel. Now, while other industries like retail and grocery have thrived during these times, the travel industry in the U.S. is quickly approaching $500 billion in total economic losses, an amazing number. And even though this has hurt all of us, it is without question that the travel industry has done one thing really, really well. And that is, it has banded together and in some ways brought us closer than we have ever been before. Now, the travel industry itself is no stranger to hardship. I mean, if we think back to 2001 or 2009, as recently as those years, and although we have been seriously damaged, we have seen many examples of strong leadership helping to keep DMOs and our destinations afloat. Now, here on the Layover Live over the last several months, we have had some of these leaders of the industry on the show, and one thing we have consistently asked our guests every single time is, what advice do you have for your fellow marketers out there? The reason we have asked this question is that often the way to get through difficult situations is to ask others how they are getting through it. Now, it would take us several shows to bring them all back to you, but we wanted to provide you with our top 7, as many of these are still very important to reiterate. So without further ado, here's our list. Number 1 starts with Gaithan Borden of Visit Lex, who says now may be the time to try some new things.
Yeah, I think like right now, in the words of one of my good friends, Leroy from St. Pete Clearwater, he says the term "let her rip," and so we've all been joking around the time of that, and basically what it means is, now is the time to try new things, and I think you're seeing now with a lot of the videos that destinations are putting out is like, we're in unprecedented times, we're in desperate times, and for me, I'm like desperate times call for desperate measures, so I'm desperate to make sure that Lexington does not get lost as a travel destination amidst all the pandemic. And so when people come out of it, I still want them to know that Lexington is here and you can still come here to visit. And so the idea of just traveling amongst that and then taking the idea of letting it rip and trying new things is like, let's just do something different. Let's see what else is out there that we haven't done before and we haven't tried before. I think marketing and social as a whole will always, you have to be personal on those platforms. And I don't think that will ever change. And I think that's one of the things that's really helped us with the content strategy.
That's great advice, Gaithan. Thank you for sharing that. Now let's go to number 2 with our friend Mitch Witten at Visit Fort Worth, who's going to talk about the word of the year being flexibility.
Well, I want to borrow something our friend Darren Dunn from Entrada told me recently, and I think the word of the year for the next 6 to 12 months is flexibility. Flexibility in our KPIs, flexibility certainly in our budgets, no matter how small those may be, leaving yourself the flexibility to evolve with the situation, but even with flexibility with your staff. We have incredible teams across the country at Simple View who are doing a lot of great work right now, but it's strenuous. Are we taking care of our staff? For the social media teams out there, I applaud you for the tough work of reading through challenging comments about it may be your DMO performance, it may be about race and culture, it may be about response to COVID-19, and those can be taxing jobs. And so I think we have to be flexible with our teams. Certainly, we're all working from home, but even going forward, what flexibility can you give your staff? I would say too, a big unanswered question I think the industry is thinking through are, what are the roles we're going to see for DMOs going forward? Maybe a lot of the traditional roles. Maybe some of us are thinking about, is there a small business support? All this engagement we've done at next level engagement with restaurants and small business, is that a role we need to take on? Is there a planning and development role? Some of our friends across, leading friends across the country have talked about we've been called on like never before to help solve local challenges, to help shape the response to COVID-19. So as we're called on to play a stronger leadership role in the community, as we're called to play a stronger leadership role in the community, I think we have to ask ourselves, what are the roles we need to be thinking about in the next 2 years, 3 years? So flexibility is going to be really the word of the year.
Thanks, Mitch. Now we're going to kick things over to Jeff Robinson from Visit Indy, who says now may be the time to think about innovation.
Is utilizing this time as an opportunity. I know that's sort of weird to say, but I think there's an opportunity while everyone is sort of looking for a life raft to think about projects that you could push through. Or maybe it's just that you're not as inundated with reacting to day-to-day things, and you can really dive into some projects that have been on your wish list for a long time. So for example, we are getting ready to launch an attraction pass, and this has been something that I've wanted to do forever, but have always gotten resistance from some of our big museums. And I think now that they are, unfortunately, as everyone is, really struggling to figure out how they're going to come out of this, they were just a little more open to it than they were before. So sort of have that dream list of projects that you've been wanting to get done, and take advantage of this time to innovate. I think DMOs need to prove, I think, that we've innovated throughout this downtime. And if we do, I think we'll be stars coming out of it.
Thanks, Jeff. Now we're going to turn it over to our good friend Jasmine Goodwin with Visit Omaha, who's going to talk about being creative as possible during these trying times.
I would have said, like a couple months ago, I would have said be flexible, because we all kind of had to scramble, and I'm sure everyone was in the same boat we were in, where we were removing advertising and kind of shifting dollars and trying to figure out, okay, what is the rest of this year going to look like? So I would say my biggest takeaway from COVID was to always be flexible. And always be ready to shift your plans based off of current events and what's happening. But also, we really took the time in quarantine to try to be as creative as possible. And, when a lot of your resources are taken away, it really just leaves your imagination. And what can you do, and how can you get it done? And social media is still a easy platform that we can jump on and use. So think outside the box, be creative. I've seen a lot of other DMOs doing some really creative, awesome things. So that would be it. Stay flexible and be creative.
Thanks, Jasmine. Now, our good friend Leroy Bridges from Visit St. Pete and Clearwater talks about DMOs being a resource and bringing value to their stakeholders during these times.
Yeah, so I can't exist without a great support group that I use. Best travel dudes ever. Shout out to my crew. Find that sounding board. Find that group that you can bounce ideas off of, because I think that's more important than ever right now. I think ultimately just stay positive and try to think about any way possible you can drive value to your stakeholders in the destination. I just had a call today with a group of breweries and a couple hotels in a community about creating a completely new bespoke co-op program for them. I mean, literally doing something we've never done. They reached out to me. We're throwing some things at the wall to see what sticks. And who knows where it will end up. But I think I'm moving forward the conversation and really kicking things around, because we just need to help. We need to be there as a resource in literally any capacity possible, whether that was in the plan or not in the plan. Another thing, we're rolling out a Visiting Safely and Responsibly campaign called Rise to Shine this week. And it is something that is so unlike what we would normally do as a DMO. And I know that the whole transition from destination marketing organization to destination management organization is a long played out conversation. But I think that this situation has created moments for us to step into conversations and voids that we've never had the opportunity for. So I get it. Budgets are tight, staffs are cut, and it's a really tough situation. But try to seize the opportunity, see the positive, and try to be as creative as possible, addressing whatever situation, whatever problems might exist. I know that's very vague and lofty, But I think, DMOs have some of the most creative people in the travel and tourism industry. We find ways to connect people and don't turn down a meeting to try and kick around ideas to help partners. You never know what will come from that.
That's great advice, Leroy. Now we're going to turn things over to our friend at Visit Savannah, Mr. Jeremy Harvey, who's going to talk about drilling down to find those most important KPIs to measure success during these times.
Sure. Yeah. And, marketers and destination marketers and specifically have so many different hats to wear and metrics to track and performance to achieve. It can be hard. It can be overwhelming, especially when you're in a period like 2020 where you kind of have to throw the marketing plan out the window and figure out how to best achieve what you need to achieve. But really, it really comes down to, I have two pieces of advice, I would say. Drill down to your most important KPIs. Figure out what that is, and that may be different for different destinations. And for us, it was generating those room nights was the number one thing we wanted to show that we were focused on, that we were performing in generating. And so figure out what that KPI is, and then just stay laser focused on it, so you can report on it later and say, as you know, this is what we tried to do, and this is what the results were. And I think that's good probably for any time, but really in the time we're in, it's really so valuable to keep focused, keep your eye on the ball.
Thanks, Jeremy. Now, lastly, we're going to kick things over to Heather Walter, who's going to talk about now may be the time to get back to basics.
Yeah. So for us, I feel like there's been a huge learning in COVID, and it's really been we say it in the office so many times, like we're going back to the basics. And so, we had grown so much over the years. And one, I think, not trap, but something that is very common of DMOs is that, we're always on the cutting edge and what's the newest thing. And we're rolling out all this new creative content, but really doing it at such a rapid pace that we don't always step back and say, how are we going to use this? We need to be able to use this for more than one quarter in our marketing. And so I think during pandemic times has really forced us to take a step back and be super duper strategic and about what it is we choose to do, and making sure it makes sense in the overall plan. And so we've really looked at analytics more than ever as an indicator. We've really gone back to, is this an initiative that will drive overnight stays, and how do we prove that? And just really going back to the basics of who we are and what our goals are as an organization, and how can we make sure that we work really smart so that everything that we do meets one of these goals, because there's less of us and there's less resources, and also leveraging locals. And so many of our bloggers during all of this were at home and they had time and they wanted to write, and as you said, everyone felt this love for their community and for their hometown. And so we now, where maybe at one time we were having staff write a lot of this content, we've developed these relationships virtually, even with our bloggers and our podcaster, that they are really truly extensions of our staff and doing it at low or no cost. So I think just going back to the basics of who you are as a destination, and really leaning into that as you try to move through these challenging times.
Well, thank you, Heather. I could not agree with you more. So there you have it, our top 7 pieces of advice from past guests of the show and some of the best marketers in the business. I hope you have found them as insightful as we certainly have here. Now, thank you to all of you who tune in each and every week, with a special thanks to those leaders who shared those insights and advice during these trying times. So if you're not subscribed, folks, please do so now. We would really appreciate it. If you'd like to consume us through audio podcasts, we're also available on Spotify and iTunes. So thanks for tuning in each and every week. We'll see you next time, and have a great day.